Today, we're back to football, talking about the quarterback battle with Emory Jones transferring out, how Todd Golden's hire will impact current Florida Gators basketball players, and I'll grade some Florida Gators NFL free agent signings only here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. Happy Wednesday. I am Brandon Olson. You can find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Written work for the whole nine sports. And like at this point, you know the drill. Leave a comment, subscribe, do whatever, review. Let me know what you think about the show. Let me know how I can make it better. All that in the YouTube community page. It's fun to talk about. We're gonna get into this quarterback battle right now. Starting quarterback spot for the Florida Gators football team is open, and of course, going as far back as Billy Napier's hire, or actually, well, a little more recent than that because Jack Miller's involved in it, and he initially wasn't even on the team, but it was Anthony Richardson, Emory Jones, Jack Miller III. Emory was not usually thought of as a candidate there because he was someone who had a rough last season, and a lot of people were like, "Hey, he's going to transfer." He said he'd transfer, and then he decided not to transfer, so it was very weird. But he has announced that he will enter the transfer portal. That he did enter the transfer portal after months of speculation, and the quarterback battle for a long time, again, was thought of as Anthony Richardson versus Jack Miller III, with the assumption that Emory Jones would transfer out once he graduated and would not win the battle. He would only stay if he won the battle, but of course that's not happening. No one really thought that would happen. But having no more Emory Jones in the picture at all, it makes me wonder if we'll see another quarterback added to that race. I think that's something to talk about because I know a lot of people like Carlos Del Rio Wilson. I like Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Should he be the guy that we talk about? Because we know that, yes, myself included, most Gators fans do want Anthony Richardson to be the starting quarterback. Although I will say, last week I talked about the quarterback battle a little bit. I saw a surprising number of people comment that Jack Miller III should be the guy, which made it weird to me because for months, you listeners, he would just yell at me that Anthony Richardson needed to be the starting quarterback. And then I got comments last week. They were like, "Hey, if Anthony Richardson is the starting quarterback, Billy Napier is going to need a new job soon for losing out on Jack Miller III as his starting quarterback." And it's a very weird situation where it's obviously the fan base is pretty torn on who it should be. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Anthony Richardson is the high ceiling player. He's a high risk, high reward player where he could be amazing, but he could very easily be very inefficient and bad. Well, I'll say bad. I don't think he will be, but I think he's going to be one of those better players. But his ceiling's insane. His floor is also very low. Then we talk about Jack Miller III, who his ceiling is very low, but his floor is very high. So yeah, Jack Miller III could be the guy where we know what we're getting, and what we're getting is not a Heisman type player where Anthony Richardson is we don't know what we'll get, could be a Heisman type player. And that brings me to Carlos Del Rio Wilson, because Carlos Del Rio Wilson is someone who he's a relative unknown. We know that. But we look at him and we say, you know what? He's got a big arm. We know he's got a big arm. We've seen him throw the football before. We know that Carlos Del Rio Wilson has a big arm. We know that he's pretty mobile. He's not Anthony Richardson mobile, but he's mobile. His arm isn't as strong as Anthony Richardson's, and he's not as mobile as Anthony Richardson. But maybe Carlos Del Rio Wilson is that happy medium where everybody's saying if you go Anthony Richardson, you're going boom or bust, and you're likely going to bust, or you're going Jack Miller III, and you're not getting a superstar, but you know what you're getting. You're getting the safe option. And it's like, well, What if Del Rio Wilson is that happy medium? What if Carlos Del Rio Wilson is, yes, not as big an arm as Anthony Richardson, not as athletic as Anthony Richardson, but he's more accurate than Anthony Richardson. And he's got a bigger arm than Jack Miller III, and he's more athletic than Jack Miller III, but he's less accurate than Jack Miller III. And then we look at that as probably being a higher floor player and a higher floor than Anthony Richardson, a higher ceiling than Jack Miller III, but a lower floor than Jack Miller III and a lower ceiling than Anthony Richardson. So he's that perfect in between there. And it's interesting because with Emory Jones gone, of course, Emory Jones has said he'll enter the transfer portal. Surely a lot of practice snaps just opened up. And it's not really clear at this point. There's only been one practice since then. So it's not really clear at this point where those snaps will go. Will they just evenly distribute them more with Anthony Richardson and Jack Miller III? Will they add Carlos Del Rio Wilson into this quarterback battle now that he's going to probably get more snaps out of this? So it's interesting to say, well, could Carlos Del Rio Wilson eat up those snaps, and could he eat up the space between himself and Anthony Richardson and Jack Miller III? Because he could show some stuff where it's like, what if he's the guy? The quarterback battle is very much an open competition at this point. I don't think it's closed off at any point. We could even talk about Jalen Kidna as the guy who, he's I'd say pretty similar play style to Jack Miller III with a little bit more athleticism and probably a little bit of a stronger arm. But he could be the guy that we talk about. It could be anybody. My bet would be Carlos Del Rio Wilson is the third quarterback discussed if there's a third quarterback to be added to this battle between Anthony Richardson and Jack Miller III. Right now, I'm still very much on the side of Anthony Richardson. I think he should be the starting quarterback. We look at Malik Willis, who had his pro day yesterday. He was throwing the ball 75 yards in the air, and everybody was just like, oh my God, that's so phenomenal. He's such a freak. We need him. He's going to be good. And it's like, yeah, he could burn out horribly. But he's got all the tools to be phenomenal. And that's what we have with Anthony Richardson. He could be awful, but he could be so good. And I think you don't want to close the door on that potential. I think you want to take that risk with him. And that's why I'm very much on the side of Anthony Richardson. Does anybody else participate in March Madness brackets every year and suck every year? I feel like I've told you guys incessantly at this point. My first team lost because I had Baylor winning the championship. And then my second team, I had Auburn. So, yeah, my bracket's just completely screwed at this point. Stat Heroes NCAA single game pick'ems, though, they pit star players against each other in a hybrid of fantasy and sports gambling, which is great for me because my bracket's already ruined. So Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in their gamers winning 4 times more often because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery of who or what you're going against. You don't need to worry about if you didn't have Miami winning to face Auburn to begin with, and you don't have to worry about Auburn facing Miami. You could have worried about them fighting someone else. So there's things like that where if you sign up for free right now with stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code lockedon for a 100% deposit match, yeah, you could get that deposit match right now. That's stathero.com/locked on using promo code locked on LOCKED no space ON for a 100% deposit match. Terms and conditions do apply. It's spring break time now, so people are in shape already. People started getting in shape in January. I didn't, but I do have vacation in 3 months, almost to the day. Wow. Okay, I need to step it up. Vacation 3 months, almost to the day. Built Bar is part of my diet now because I just started that today. Well, yesterday now, but you get the point. But Built Bar is how I do it because I've got a hardcore sweet tooth, and Built Bar is coated in 100% chocolate. So I get my sweetness. Most bars have 130 calories and just 4 net carbs, along with 17 grams of protein. So getting more into working out again. So I get my protein. Hidden stashes gone. No Reese's, no Kit Kat, no Skittles. I'm a Skittles guy. None of that. It is Built Bar time. So Built Bar, they're always coming out with new limited time flavors, so you'll never get bored. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order that is locked 15 LOCKED 15 to get 15% off of your next order with Built. or BuiltBar.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you get your podcast. We're going to talk about Florida Gators and Todd Golden's system. Todd Golden is, of course, the new head coach of the Florida Gators men's basketball team. And offensively, when we look at this system, the name of the game is spacing. I went in depth on this yesterday, but Todd Golden puts a premium on spacing and 3-point shooting. And when I say a premium on 3-point shooting, I don't just mean in terms of chucking up a lot of shots, and I don't mean only taking good shots. I mean, the point here is to get a lot of 3-point shots and to have them be a lot of open 3-point shots. So we're looking at quantity of threes attempted and the quality of those threes attempted. That means that you can expect that current number from this past Gator season of 26.1 threes attempted per game to go up to about 35 to 40 next year. I know that Todd Golden likes getting that number up to as high as 47, is I believe the highest that San Francisco had while he was the head coach. So we want to get that number up significantly. And if you didn't listen to yesterday's episode of Locked On Gators, which you should, like it's lengthy and it goes very in depth about Todd Golden and his system and what you can expect from the Florida Gators men's basketball program. So I do recommend it. But Todd Golden loves specifically catch and shoot threes because the most efficient shots in basketball are close to the rim twos and catch and shoot threes. So obviously, those are going to be the focal point of this Florida Gators offense under Todd Golden. But then you got to look at who will we see on this roster benefit from that. Like we could look at someone like Elijah Kennedy and say, hey, you like shooting threes, but he hasn't converted a high percentage of those threes. And I think that's something where he's obviously got to get better at shooting, but he's going to get more opportunities. Of course, he likes shooting the threes. He's got to improve. And maybe this stage this year was just too big for him, and whatever it might have been. I don't care. But he's going to improve there. But that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the focal point of the Gators, not just systematically, because systematically the focal point will be close to the rim twos, and catch and shoot threes. So who will be the focal point in terms of who will maximize those? We're looking at Quasi Reaves primarily. He obviously really came into his own towards the very end of the season. Like we look at the SEC tournament game, and that was his best game against Texas A&M. That was easily his biggest game of the season, his best game of the season. He carried the Gators for a bit there, and he's probably going to be the leading scorer of the Florida Gators next year. Looking at the roster, it's like when I think of just scoring, it's Quasi Reaves. When I look at defense, rebounding, whatever it might be, it's Niles Lane. So Quasi Reaves will likely be the leading scorer for the Florida Gators next year, not just for what he showed, but for how perfect of a fit he is in Todd Golden's offense. That's a very important part because 96.9% of Kowacie Reeves' made threes were assisted, with most of them being catch and shoot. So a lot of the times he was having someone set up the shots for him and he was just finishing the play. So that's going to be big for him because he's going to get those looks next season. We're going to see a lot of 5 out from the Florida Gators next year. We're going to see a lot of 4 out and 1 in from the Florida Gators next year. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Quasi Reaves fits in there, if he's going to be a corner, if he's going to be a ball handler that's supposed to be getting to the rim and supposed to be someone that's going to be on the outside getting those shots. So it's going to be very interesting. But most of them are going to be catch and shoot, probably, at least in terms of 3-pointers attempted for Quasi Reaves next year. Let me look at the other part of this Todd Golden offense. We're going to look at the close to the rim twos. And the person that we have there is Niles Lane. He's going to be a big part of this offense. Also, not just for what he showed this year, but for what a fit he would be in Todd Golden's offense, because he is very good at shooting close to the rim. But also, there's another thing with Todd Golden wants the Gators to get to the free throw line. Like I said in yesterday's show, Todd Golden said that a good free throw rate is 35 to 40%. Niles Lane had a free throw rate of 44.4%. And if you didn't listen to yesterday's show, or if you don't know what free throw rate is, free throw rate has nothing to do with your shooting percentage from the free throw line. It is not your free throw percentage. Free throw percentage is how many of your free throw opportunities you convert. Free throw rate is basically how often a player gets to the free throw line compared to how often they shoot in general. So Niles Lane had a free throw rate of 44.4%. So he gets to the free throw line pretty often considering the volume of shots he takes. So he's going to be taking probably more shots next year. That free throw rate might drop a little bit, but if it does get better, or if it stays the same even, that's phenomenal because like I said, Todd Golden wants people to have a free throw rate of 35 to 40%. So that's very, very big here for the Florida Gators, for this whole team, really. And obviously, it's going to depend on the entire team, but we have the two focal points. We have the two gears that are going to make this offense run, and that's going to be very important here. And it bodes well for the Gators that the two best Gators that are going to be here next year in Quasi Reaves and Niles Lane are also the two best Todd Golden system fits. That is a fantastic mesh here, and it's very lucky that it worked out that way. The biggest concern here, though, is how can Todd Golden place other complementary pieces around Reeves and Lane? But I'd expect that to become a solid mix of portal guys and high school recruits, at least for this year. We know that, in 2021, 2022 season, ton of transfer portal guys for the Florida Gators. I expect a good deal of them coming in for the 2022 season, but that's primarily because there's not a ton of people on the roster anymore. And obviously, we'll add more high school recruits. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 add year. It's probably going to be 3 to 5 guys that get added here. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Todd Golden adds these players. And yesterday, I spoke about his approach to recruiting too. So if you want to hear about that, you can listen to yesterday's episode, which again, I very much recommend. We're going to talk about the NFL Florida Gators, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions of, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX, bro? And wait while the person behind the counter tries to order the parts on their computer or searches for them and does all that. You can cut out that middleman. You can search for things yourself. You can find things yourself. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Always got to show the phone. There we go. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And also, be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know exactly who sent you. With amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need, visit rockauto.com. To wrap up today's show, we're talking about some Florida Gators free agency signings, and I can't include Demarcus Robinson because we don't have the details yet. I can't include Dante Fowler Jr. because we don't have the details yet. I can't include Fred Johnson because he got waived yesterday morning after getting tendered by the Cincinnati Bengals, but of course they added a ton of offensive line talent. But I do have three people that I do want to talk about. One of them is an offensive lineman. Two of them play defense, and two of them I've been very vocally supportive of, and I love what they do. Marcus Maye is the first one. He was the big Gators free agent signing this offseason. His contract is with the New Orleans Saints for 3 years, worth $22.5 million at maximum, with $14.5 million guaranteed. Now I'm giving that grade an A minus. The reasoning being that the Saints lost Marcus Williams to the Ravens, so it is a great add for the Saints to add a big time safety like Marcus Maye. It's a big plus for Marcus Maye as well, because if you don't remember the free agency primer kind of thing that I did, Marcus Maye last season signed the franchise tag with the New York Jets, and he did get paid, and that's great for him. So he signed a franchise tag with the New York Jets, but he got injured with a season-ending injury. And I openly expressed my concern that he might just get a 1-year deal somewhere and get screwed over because he played on the tag, which is the worst thing in football. And he played on the tag and got injured and could have cost himself millions of dollars. He probably did. He probably would have made a lot more if he was healthy last season or throughout the entire season. But he's getting paid despite his injury. He's still making, on average, about $7.15 million per year, which is great for him. So dope for you, man. That math is probably wrong. I don't know. I'm not great with math, but that's where we're at. He's a great team culture fit with the New Orleans Saints because the New Orleans Saints are, I know that a lot of you guys are Bucs fans. But I think the Saints have probably the best team culture in football where they just let every player just be themselves. Like Gators fans, you guys know Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is one of the most obnoxious players in football. And the Saints are just like, yeah, dude, if you play well, we don't care. And I love that about them. So I think that's great where Marcus May can be himself and do whatever he wants. And I think that scheme fit wise, he's going to be great for the Saints. I think that the Saints will benefit more from having Marcus May than Marcus May will benefit from having the Saints. Scheme fit, of course. I think that makes sense because the Saints have Marcus May where they can move around and they can do whatever, and he's going to be that Swiss Army knife. I think he's going to outplay the value of his contract, which is why I say that I think they're getting more than he's getting out of this deal because they lost Marcus Williams, the starting safety, and he's an elite football player. Don't care if you're a Bucs fan and hate him. He's an elite football player. He's now in Baltimore, so that's great for you guys. But I think Marcus May is going to be a great fit for the Saints. I think it was a great get. It's an A minus because I wish he made more money with them. But again, at least he got a decent paycheck despite the injury. Next up is Alex Anzalone, who I don't even have to go into how much I love him. You guys all know I'm a huge Alex Anzalone fan. He re-signed with the Lions 1 year, $2.25 million with $1.75 million guaranteed. I think that's great. I'm grading it as a B. But Alex Anzalone is one of the players where when I was doing this free agency primer issue, I said Alex Anzalone should consider re-signing with the Lions because I think he was a great fit there. He obviously did his thing. I've talked about the numbers incessantly about how it started, and then once Jamie Collins left, he was stellar in coverage. He's returning to the team this season. That he kind of got to rejuvenate his career with. So that's big. Where Alex Anzalone is staying with the Lions, who did help him rejuvenate his career. He helped them a ton. Also, he's still also just 27 years old. If he can perform well this season, like if he could repeat last year, maybe step it up a little bit in the run game. But if he could repeat last year and he could stay healthy for the huge majority of the season, like if he plays like 15 games, that's great. So if he can play well and he can stay healthy, that opens the door for him in his age 28 season to have a bigger contract. I'm not saying huge. Like he's not going to sign a $12 million a year contract, but he can make a solid $6 million per year, and I think that's phenomenal. So he can open it up for a bigger contract next year and also a longer term contract this year. I think that the 1 year deal here is a win-win because the Lions don't have to overpay for a player that had one healthy season over the past few seasons, and Alex Anzalone gets to maybe get a big contract next year. So this is one of those cases where, yeah, I think it's good to have a 1 year deal. The money I think is very good. I didn't think he would get 2.25 million this year because again, he's just one healthy year, one good year. So I didn't think he'd get that. But getting $1.75 million guaranteed, so $1,750,000 guaranteed, that's big because, like I've said, Alex Anzalone has injury history. If he does get injured and he misses most of the season, he's still getting a lot of that money, and that's big for him because, like I said, he gets hurt. If he misses time, he's still getting paid. His family's still taken care of. The final Gator we're talking about for NFL free agency, Trent Brown. Another Florida Gator that re-signed with the team he was with, the Patriots, for 2 years, $22 million with $4 million guaranteed. This contract is this grade is getting a C minus from me. Reasoning being that I know that I said he should re-sign with the Patriots. I still think that re-signing with the Patriots is great for him. It's a great team fit. It's a great culture fit. He does well there. He plays well there. And he's not agile enough to do a lot of this wide zone stuff. So he was pretty limited in his options in terms of scheme fit. So I think re-signing with the Patriots where you're a scheme fit is a big plus here. So I think that's great for Trent Brown to re-sign with the Patriots. I think that was great. What sucks is that contract. And I like the contract's an F, but re-signing with the Patriots is like an A plus. So that's why he's getting a C minus here. Most of his contract, I get it, 2 years, $22 million sounds phenomenal. But actually, not even most of that contract, but a good deal of that contract it's really a 2 year, $13 million contract. That's what he's getting. That's what I'm getting to. 2 years, $13 million contract with $4 million guaranteed. $9 million of his contract are dependent on playing time incentives. And that really sucks when you consider that Trent Brown does have a pretty extensive injury history. He does have issues with his weight and staying at a solid playing weight, I'll say. He has issues with his weight, he has issues with his injury history. So he likely won't see that full 2 year, $22 million contract that he signed. He will likely get 2 years, $13 million. That I don't think is an issue. I don't think the 2 years, $13 million is the issue for him. I think that it sucks that it's like 2 years, 22 million, and it looks like a good, like $11 million a year looks like a good contract. But like 40% of it is on playing time incentives that he might not hit. Like he might turn it into 2 years, 15 million, 2 years, 18 million, but 2 years, 22 million with only $4 million guaranteed, by the way. So he can get cut tomorrow, and he's not even cutting that much against the cap. So I think that it's a great team fit. I think it's a great culture fit. I think that's phenomenal. But he got absolutely shafted on that contract, and that is like the worst contract that I've ever seen Drew Rosenhaus sign for anybody. I think that was awful. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more on your Florida Gators. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. You can find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports. That is WHOLE and any sports. And I'll see you all tomorrow.